we've got a 20-kilometer long soil anomaly. That soil anomaly is the strongest on record in Zambia. It grades up to 0.728% copper. It's the kind of target that it's world-class. Everybody's looking for this, a tier 1 target. And last summer, Rio Tinto, who owns property to the south of us, drilled a discovery hole down there. And that discovery hole brought a lot of attention to the area. And it brought a lot of attention to Midnight Sun, because all of a sudden people realized that this area is going to produce more of these world-class copper deposits, or it's very likely to. And that put us in touch with some really interesting groups, one of which was KoBold. And we started looking at the possibility of working together to develop Dumbwa, which is the area that we've just struck a deal on.
Welcome to the Jay Martin Show. If you're new to the show, my name is Jay. I'm an investor. I'm here looking for the smartest home for my cash. If that sounds like you, then I think you're going to like what we do here. My guest today is Adrian O'Brien, and today we're talking copper, we're talking Zambia, but most importantly, we're talking the marriage of some of the biggest tech titans from the Silicon Valley injecting hundreds of millions of dollars into the junior mining industry. And this is a marriage of industries that frankly I've been waiting for like 15 years, because the only way we can actually realize the future big tech has promised us, electric vehicles, renewable power, blah, 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 you name it. We need the ingredients that we don't have right now. This is the copper, this is the nickel, this is the cobalt, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so a lot of us have been wondering, at what point in time will big tech realize they need to start investing in the extractive industries if they have any intention of delivering on some of these very ambitious targets, electric vehicles alone, for example. So that's what we get into today. The company we're going to talk about is KoBold Metals, founded and funded by Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and Richard Branson and Jack Ma. And love them or hate them, I don't care. I'm not here to convince you of anything. I'm here to explain to you about the capital they are pushing towards the junior mining sector and why it's very significant. I'm joined today by Adrian O'Brien from Midnight Sun, which is a copper development company based in Zambia, and a recent recipient of a ton of cash from KoBold Metals. We're going to talk about all that coming right up. Here is Adrian. Enjoy. All right, here I am with Adrian O'Brien of Midnight Sun. Adrian, it's great to have you on the program, man. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure, Jay. Really appreciate it.
So today I want to talk copper. I want to talk Zambia. I want to talk the Silicon Valley arriving in the mining space, which is major headline news. And this is a thread, by the way, that if retail investors in the junior mining sector are not paying attention to the amount of capital coming out of the Silicon Valley to the exploration business right now, this is something that needs to get on your radar. We're going to talk about this today because you're very close to this. Actually, you're working with the biggest company in the business right now, KoBold Metals, founded by Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Jack Ma, I believe, Richard Branson, the celebrity list of capital behind this deal. So we'll get into all that stuff, but let's start off because they're focused on copper. You're focused on copper. Let's start off with that, Adrian. Big question. Why copper? Why now? What are you seeing?
Well, I mean, it's I always like to say it's the metal of electrification. So that's the reality. What's going on right now is that there is an unprecedented demand for copper. We've never seen this before. Basically, huge shortages. There's supply chain issues coming out of South America. There's a number of different things going on down there with some of the biggest mines in the world. And really what you're running into is a combination of supply chain issues, lack of copper supply, and a lack of new big deposits coming online. And so you've got this demand driven mainly by electrification, electric vehicles, copper's everywhere around us. But the reality is there is no way we can keep up with the kind of demand that's expected. And so there's kind of this 12 to 18 month lag going on right now where it hasn't fully hit yet. So people aren't feeling it the way that they're going to. But when it hits, there is going to be a drive for demand in copper that is going to absolutely drive the copper price like crazy, I'm sure. And it's going to result in people looking to new supplies in copper and rushing to get them on stream as quickly as possible. So when you look at the types of deposits that traditionally were mined, it was mainly porphyry copper deposits, right? That makes up the majority of copper deposits around the world. And copper porphyries are, they're in South America. You see them in the US, you see them in Canada and BC. There are some absolutely enormous copper porphyry deposits, but the problem is all the easy ones have been found. It's getting to that point now where big new, and when I say big, I'm talking not a couple 100 million tons. I'm talking 500 million tons, 800 million tons, 1 billion tons. These big monster copper porphyries are super tough to find now, and they're getting tougher and tougher to find. And so the ones that are being found have really long lead times to come online. You could be looking at easily plus 10 years to get a new project on stream, maybe 20. Mm-hmm. I mean, these things take a long time. They take a lot of work, and they're looking at new ways to develop them, block cave models, underground models, ways to mine these things, because the new porphyries that have that kind of size and scale are underground deposits. They're deeper, they're harder to get at, and that means your capex is going to be way, way bigger. And copper projects always have had a historically high capex. They can be 500 million to $1 billion to get them into production. So those are super cost prohibitive for small companies and super long lead times. And that means there's no way to ease that shortage that's coming in short order, other than different kinds of copper deposits. So set X copper deposits in particular, and in jurisdictions where you have lots of operating mines that can take advantage of that ore really quickly, and you don't have to worry about building infrastructure and that 10 plus year lead time that would come with a traditional project.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, what it comes down to, is we got to find a way to accelerate the discovery and feasibility process, right? And,
exactly. Yeah.
And I mean, you nailed it when you're like, there are no new projects. There's no new discoveries being made, no new big deposits coming online. And right. Even if they're discovered, that 10 to 20 year timeline, like that's very real. And that's a symptom of our lack of innovation in the sector over the last 100 years, right? Yeah. And then the existing mines that are supplying us are becoming compromised as a matter of jurisdictional risk in certain Latin American countries, as you mentioned. It was Ross Beatty on my stage at the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference last year who said, we were talking copper and supply and demand. Yeah. And then he backed up and he's like, look, Jay, you know what? There actually isn't a supply issue with copper. We've got more than enough copper than we need. The problem is it's all deep in the earth and we have no idea where it is. But in terms of just mineralization globally, we have the supply of the resource. We just haven't invested the capital to extract it. Enter KoBold Metals. I mean, this is kind of an interesting segue because you name big tech company, pick any one of them. They have identified this is a massive problem staring them in the face, is that if we can't uncover significant new supply of copper, the price is going to skyrocket, because even if demand stays static, like let's say the vehicle electrification trend pauses, it just flatlines. Doesn't really matter, right? Because we're still depleting our supplies at a rate far quicker than we're drawing on them. Yeah. And obviously big tech realizes this. Obviously they see, a key input in their business models being copper, right? Skyrocketing in price, compromising their margins, all this stuff. And I've been kind of wondering, like, when is Silicon Valley going to wake up to the fact that they need the minerals to build the products for the future they've been promising us? Now they are. So who is KoBold Metals? Let's start here. Who is KoBold Metals, Adrian, and what are they doing?
So, I mean, you hit on a couple of really interesting things. I mean, you and I have both been in this industry a very, very long time. I think I'm going into my 27th or 28th year in this business. I never thought we would see the kind of names that are coming into this now. It's not that I didn't think Silicon Valley would come in. I think you're right. Like at some point, I think we all thought they're going to show up at some point. This is getting too important, but it wasn't going to be gold that was going to drag them in. It was going to be critical metals and copper and other specialty metals, copper particularly though. Enter KoBold Metals. I think this is kind of representative of the entry point. And certainly, I think it's catching a lot of people off guard. They're getting a lot of media now. We're seeing them in the Wall Street Journal. We're seeing this talked about in a lot of places. And KoBold it's a brilliant strategy. The idea is, KoBold Metals they're a passive mining company. Meaning they don't want to own and run mines. They want to own at least a portion of mines and be a passive partner in those. They are an AI exploration company, meaning they have developed technology that allows them to go out and let's say the lead time, talking about projects and talking about these long lead projects that are 10 years plus. What they think they can do and what their technology and their AI is designed to do is at every step of the way with exploration, we go out, typically we do soil geochem, we do geophysics, we do drilling, we do trenching, we do all these different types of sort of geological steps to developing a project to feasibility and eventually taking it as far as production. What they do is they apply their AI at every step of the process. And what it allows them to do is refine the targets over and over and over at such a high level and so succinctly that they eliminate years of work. So the idea is they think they can develop a project that would typically take this 10-year lead time or more in like 4 years, 3 years, 5 years. They can accelerate it to a degree that we've never seen before. And so with that business model, this is disruptive. This is important. This is potentially going to change the exploration industry. And backing that is, as you mentioned at the top of this, you've got Bill Gates. Bill Gates runs a large fund that Jeff Bezos is a big investor in. So Jeff Bezos is in this. Jack Ma, Richard Branson, the list goes on and on. Michael Bloomberg, you name it. It is literally a list of billionaire investing luminaries that have now dove into the resource sector and said, hey, this is important. Critical metals are important. Copper is important. We need to find new supplies and we need to get them to market quicker than we've ever done it before. And enter KoBold Metals. So, and they are our new partners in Zambia. So,
as you said, time to build 10 to 20 years. Today, their goal is 4 to 6 years. That is the problem to solve, isn't it? Like that is the problem they're focused on. That's why they exist.
That is the problem. It's a problem in the resource sector from an investor interest standpoint too, because people look at this as a very slow, long thing, right? People want things quick. They want to see instant gratification. They want quick rises in share prices and development of projects. This could change all of that. So it's interesting watching this because man, you mentioned how long you've been in this business. I haven't been in it that long, but 15 years thereabouts, right? And it's early days in this development. Like, let me just be clear. Having said that, I also feel like it's one of those moments where an industry pivots and it changes in a way where the game is never played the same again, and because KoBold isn't the only company, by the way, there's a handful of much smaller, lesser known, less headline worthy. I don't want to call them copycat companies, but similar business model companies where they're aggressively attacking the exploration and development industry with innovation, which has been lacking, right? And one of the reasons it's been lacking is because capital has been lacking as well. And so they're solving two problems here. You just struck a deal with KoBold Metals. I want you to walk my audience through how this deal came to fruition, what the details are that we should all be aware of, and why this is significant and what's going on. Yeah, for sure. So maybe in a minute we can dive into the project details a little bit more, but I'll give you an idea. We're located in an area in Zambia called the Domes region of the Zambian Congo Copper Belt. And essentially it is one of the top regions in the world for monster copper deposits. And when I say monster, I'm talking billion-tonne copper deposits. There's 5 operating mines around us that are all absolutely world-class operators everywhere. And we're the only junior that's in that Domes region that has a key piece of property located amongst all these large world-class mines. And, we've been working there for about a decade. We've made big strides on our property, but it is a very large project, very tough to move it ahead, cost intensive. So you've got capital costs that are higher than other areas just in terms of the size of the property, the scope of the property. But we've done a lot of work and we've made a lot of headway. We've made some really important discoveries. And KoBold moved in and targeted Zambia for the same reasons. We looked at Zambia, looked at the Zambian Congo Copper Belt. This is an area with copper deposits that eclipse most other areas in the world. So why not look there? Like, if you're going to go exploring, this is where you want to be. And, over the last couple of years, a few interesting developments have taken place. And probably the one that kind of got the area going. I mean, we have a few pretty significant discoveries, but the area that KoBold was interested in, we've got a 20-kilometer long soil anomaly. And it lines up directly with the Kansanshi mine pit, which is just above us to the north. That's owned by First Quantum. That soil anomaly is the strongest on record in Zambia. It grades up to 0.728% copper. It's the kind of target that it's world-class. Everybody's looking for this, a tier 1 target. And last summer, Rio Tinto, who owns property to the south of us, drilled a discovery hole down there. And that discovery hole brought a lot of attention to the area. And it brought a lot of attention to Midnight Sun because all of a sudden people realized that this area is going to produce more of these world-class copper deposits, or it's very likely to. And that put us in touch with some really interesting groups, one of which was KoBold. And we started looking at the possibility of working together to develop Dumbwa, which is the area that now we've just struck a deal on.
Okay. And what are the details of this deal? What's the cash injection and time horizon? What are we looking at?
So it's a 4.5-year deal. And so again, this is a very large target. Basically, what we're going to do is a 4.5-year deal. It's a joint venture, 4.5 years, and it's $15 million in exploration over 4.5 years. So it's aggressive. I mean, they see the value in this target. They want to get in there, and they want to get this thing to an inflection point where we can see what the size and scale of this system actually is, what kind of potential it has as far as a deposit, and whether or not it is one of these billion-tonne copper deposits that we're hoping is there. Big SEDEX target. These are SEDEX deposits. So the right kind of thing. So
Can you define that SEDEX deposit, Adrian?
Yeah. So typically, we were talking about porphyry copper deposits, right? As opposed to porphyry copper deposits, SEDEX deposits are typically, they don't have the same kind of depth that a porphyry does. They tend to be more of a layered deposit. They're sediment hosted. So in this case, they're typically in shales, and you build your tonnage on strike and dip. So you're not going to see big, broad intercepts. Like when you drill a porphyry, it's not rare to see a 100-meter, 200-meter drill intercept. In fact, recently I saw one from somebody that was like 300 meters, monster hit. These tend to be 10 to 15 meters thick. Okay. So if you hit and you find one of these, they tend to be a layer. An easy description that I give people is a coal seam. People tend to know what those look like. They're like a thick layer of this stuff in the ground that goes on and on and on and on and on. And you just kind of follow it and you keep building tonnage on strike. That's what a SEDEX deposit is essentially like.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you for clarifying. How do the economics of a SEDEX deposit vary from a porphyry, Adrian?
Really, I think the big thing is, again, if a porphyry deposit's at surface, they tend to be quite easy. If a porphyry deposit is underground, it's deep, which is what they're finding now. They're extremely, extremely expensive to extract. And when you're looking at Zambia, you're looking at open pit targets. So these are open pit deposits. They don't tend to be super deep. And because you can build them on strike and they're essentially kind of a big layered complex, it's not hard to build them out and to build tonnage really quickly. And so the economics are really outstanding, and they don't come with the same kind of gigantic capex that these big porphyry deposits typically do. So a little better from the economic standpoint, but a really important point for us is that, again, we're 6 kilometers away from the Kansanshi mine. That's First Quantum's flagship.
Yeah, it's the mine that built First Quantum.
That is the mine that built First Quantum. Yeah. We're not out to build a mine. We don't even need to arm wave that we're out to build a mine. We are out to find a large multi-generational transformational copper deposit, and there will be mines in the area that can make use of that feed. And that's the goal here, is to make sure that provides feed for the next decades of production in this area. It's not in our best interest or shareholders' best interest to be out building mines. We don't need to do it.
Yeah, no, good call on that front. And if I've got it correct, the geologist who found First Quantum's Kansanshi mine has now been hired by KoBold Metals. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. That's David Broughton. So David Broughton is, I would argue, probably the top SEDEX copper deposit in the world, or copper geologist in the world. David is brilliant, and he's been involved in a number of different things. I think Kansanshi, he headed up the production team at Kansanshi. He found Kamoa-Kakula for Ivanhoe, which, if someone's not familiar with that, I mean, it's just to the north of us. They're inside the DRC, so they're over the border in DRC. But that deposit is next level. It's 585 million tons at 2.92% copper. Astronomical numbers, huge. And David was the guy that basically did that. He also found Platreef. He's been involved with probably most of the big ones in our region and some of the biggest in the world. And he's been hired by KoBold as their chief geologist in copper. So he's put together an amazing team, and he has Murray Hitzman, who's the ex-head of the U.S. Geological Survey. He has geologists. He basically has gone around and collected the top SEAL Team 6 group of geologists to run these copper projects in Zambia. And I mean, you couldn't ask for a better team. And so that's who will be driving our project forward for us. And so by way of this deal, we have inherited literally the top copper team you could have. So it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting, actually. Okay, so backing up, a $15 million investment by KoBold Metals into Midnight Sun to be spent on exploration over the next 4.5 years. Do they have some first rights or option to upgrade if they like what they're seeing midway through the exploration process?
That deal is pretty clear, actually. There's a couple of key points there. So 4.5-year deal. There is a cash component. It's $500,000. So basically $100,000 a year for the next 4.5 years. But that gets them to 75%. We want to maintain some interest in this. And because we're
75% of the Dumbwa project. Yeah.
Of the Dumbwa project. Yeah. And so that is only not even a quarter of our entire land package. So we have 4 separate targets. This is only one of the 4, but it's the sort of the top target right now in terms of advancement and potential. So that's why KoBold has isolated Dumbwa as being the one that they want to go after. They will have, at the end of that deal, they'll have 75% of Dumbwa. We still maintain everything else. But what's really important is that they have to get to the end of that 4.5-year term. They have to spend all $15 million and make all $500,000 of those cash payments in order to get to that 75%. If they don't get anything. It's all the way down the line or nothing, which they're on board for. And I think that speaks volumes about the quality of the project from their standpoint as well.
Yeah. Okay. Now put that in context. You said, they can earn in 75% of Dumbwa, which equates to less than 25% of your total land package, correct? Yeah. So what else are we sitting on at Midnight Sun? So
the entire property is 506 square kilometers.
It's huge.
It's huge. And it's really hard for people to envision how big 500 square kilometers actually is. But it's significantly larger than most of the land packages in the area that host the Kansanshi mine. The Lumwana mine, which is owned by Barrick, just next door to us to the west, or First Quantum Sentinel mine. It is a very, very large land package. And essentially, what is unique about it is that these deposits are driven by geological domes. And typically under each of those big deposits or mines, there is maybe one dome. And on our property, we have 3 separate geological domes. And so what that's doing is, if you took our property and basically divided it into 4 quadrants, you kind of have the southeast corner, which is where Dumbwa is located. The southwest corner, we have something called Me Too. Up to the center on the west side, we have something called Crunch. And then to the north, we have something called Kaziba. And each of those are a separate individual target and individual opportunity for a system that could be multi-generational. So we have 4 separate areas that could be a multi-generational copper deposit. And basically Dumbwa is, again, it's the most advanced. This 20-kilometer soil anomaly is amazing. I mean, 0.728% copper, to put that in context. If you found trace copper in soil, you'd be excited in this area. There's cover over the whole property. So it's not like there's bedrock and you're going to see a lot of copper at surface. Mm-hmm. To find that kind of number in soil tells you that there's something big driving that. There's something going on there to drive those kind of numbers. And over that 20 kilometers, we also see things like vegetation kill zones, which we assumed when we first got on the property to be agriculturally driven, but they're not. They're actually driven by large sulfide systems, these SEDX systems underneath. And so kind of all signs point to some kind of a big system at Dumbwa. And that's why when you combine that with that discovery made last summer off the boundary of our property, and that was, by the way, right at the tip of Dumbwa and right off the edge of our property. So somehow linked to that same system. And when you look at that, it's clear why KoBold wants to develop that target right away. It's the most advanced, it has the most potential right out of the chute. But it still leaves us with Me Too, Crunch, and Kaziba, and 75% plus of the property to ourselves. And so that's a lot of blue skies still left for our shareholders. And yet the deal with KoBold is really going to open the doors here and pave the way from a marketing perspective and a notoriety perspective, so we can really advance this and start to get the attention on this that we should.
So where do you go next if, I don't want to simplify it, but say Dumbwa is kind of taken care of in terms of it's financed, you got a great partner, right? You got a great runway here, 4.5 years of cash, 15 million, right? 15 million invested in exploration, which is huge in a market where many junior mining companies cannot finance right now. And I always say, like, in this business, the most important resource is not the mineral, it's cash. It's your access to cash. It's the oxygen of junior mining companies.
Is key, right? Yeah.
100%. So, great. Dumbwa is taken care of. It's financed for a nice runway here. Where do you go next, and how do you go there next? So talk to me about what other news flow prospective shareholders could expect from you, Adrian, when it comes to, Me Too, Crunch, or Kaziba.
Yeah. So first off, as the deal develops with KoBold, KoBold's a private company, so the marketing is going to fall on Midnight Sun. So we're going to have news flow like we've never seen before. They're going to be out there. They're very aggressive about their drilling. They're going to do 2,000 meters of drilling in the first year. So they're set on getting out there, hitting the ground running, and drilling the heck out of Dumbwa, which is fantastic. That's what it needs. So we're going to have news flow on that front. But when you look at Me Too, Crunch, and Kaziba, now our job becomes, how do we develop those three other targets? Do we finance them independently? Do we bring in other joint venture partners? Do we treat them each as a separate project and do that? That could be very well what we do. So now we're evaluating ideas, we're evaluating opportunities, and looking at which area we want to go to next. Likely it'll be Me Too or Kaziba. But probably if the market will go with us on this. In other words, if we can get the capital together, and I'm pretty confident that we have a good shot at that, I think we go out and drill Me Too or Kaziba, and we drill these on our own, and we develop those targets on our own now and maintain as much of that potential as we can. But that remains to be seen. I mean, there is other interest, and we've talked to a lot of groups over the last little while. It may be bringing a joint venture partner in on those other pieces as well. But either way, we're maintaining a huge amount of blue sky potential for our shareholders by developing them independently. So that's the goal.
Anything you can share on that? Just thinking through what you just said, there's a handful of other JV partners you might entertain for these other projects. I mean, You're surrounded by, Barrick, Rio Tinto, First Quantum, Ivanhoe's not far, Anglo Americans right there. Yeah. You're in good company. I can speculate about the conversations you're having. Anything you can share?
There's not a lot I can share, but you can look at the area as you're clearly doing right now, and you can see who the big players are. Companies that would be interested, and really it's pretty obvious that there are a handful of players there that could benefit gigantically from a new development or a new discovery at Midnight Sun's property. And so there is definite potential to bring a JV partner in. We've come out of left field with this deal with KoBold, which brings a brand new player into the district. They are working in Zambia on some more advanced projects, but this is kind of their flagship exploration project in the Domes region. But that leaves all those other world-class companies are out there also keeping an eye on Midnight Sun, and maybe there's some potential there to bring one of those groups in for at least one piece of this. But it remains to be seen. Right now, we need to kind of decide what the next moves are. And I mean, these targets are phenomenal. Like you don't want Dumbwa to overshadow the value at Me Too or Kaziba. At Me Too, we put out some drill results last year. They were fantastic. They're the right kind of discovery holes that we expect to see. You're getting, over 1% of copper and significant widths. But a couple of things came from that really got us and really demonstrated a couple of interesting things. As we say, if you split the property up into 4 pieces, you kind of have 4 separate systems. So we think that each area, Me Too, Crunch, Kaziba, and Dumbwa, are independent geological systems that each have the potential to host their own multi-generational copper deposit. And that drilling that we announced last year at Me Too was significant because there were holes that we had already drilled and announced, but we are drilled and received, but we looked at those assays and went, hey, these are a little higher grade than we expected. They're really good. Let's run them a second time. And we had a couple of holes that we had never run, and we went, let's throw them in again. And let's see what those come out at as well. And when we got those results back, essentially, we ended up with 2 things. We ended up with, we expected copper and cobalt. We typically see copper and cobalt across our property, but we ended up with nickel and gold as well. And that's really important from 2 different perspectives. Number one, it's the only part of our property where we see nickel and gold mixed in with copper and cobalt. Number 2, that gives us geological proof of concept that this is an independent system. This is different. This is different than what we see in Dumbwa, different than what we've seen in drilling at Kaziba. This is something else altogether. And taking that a step further, it gave us a new analog, because in the district, in the Domes region, the only other mine that you see that at is First Quantum Sentinel mine, which is kind of the furthest one to the west in that area. Mm-hmm. They see nickel and gold as well. And so it gives us a brand new analog, and our geological team can look at this and go, hey, this isn't a Lumwana lookalike. This isn't a Kansanshi lookalike. This is Sentinel. And if we can take the geological knowledge that is out there from Sentinel and apply that at Me2, it gives us a really good shot. So, Me2 is an exciting target, and we now have drill results that give us something to kind of really wave our arms and say, this is significant. You have 11.5 meters of 1.5%. You've got nickel, you've got gold, copper, cobalt. You have a suite of metals that lend themselves to something really exciting. So that's Me2. And then Kaziba as well. We've got a couple of big discovery holes at Kaziba that are significant. And when I say significant, I'm talking 11.5 meters of 5.7% copper, 21 meters of 3.2. I mean, these are significant intercepts. And, I don't know that I would go as far as to call them discovery holes yet. They're discovery holes, certainly. But we haven't linked up an entire big system. But what they tell us is that there's something there, and something worth serious exploration and serious development to figure out, just like Dumbwa, how big is this? Is it a billion-tonne system? What are we sitting on? And the reality is, in this area, if you find something that's significant and real, it has the potential to be a billion-tonne system, and it's not likely to be smaller, because that's not what this area generates. These are big targets.
Got it. Okay. Adrian, I want to ask you one last question, and it's just, what can we expect next? People are going to watch this interview and they're going to be waiting for a press release now. So, what are you going to hit them with? When should we expect to hear from you? Walk me through immediate near-term news flow.
So I think what things look like from here on in, again, KoBold is going to be aggressive. They are very, very, well-heeled in their exploration techniques for the region, taking David Broughton into account, taking his approach into account. They know what to do. So they're going to move Dumbwa forward. They're going to do at least 2,000 meters of drilling. Yeah. That means that as soon as the rainy season ends, which is February, as soon as that rainy season is out of the way, they're going to hit the ground running. They're going to start drilling. They're going to drill aggressively. And that's a minimum number, by the way. They may drill more than that. They're welcome to do as much drilling as they want to do. And certainly under the terms of the deal, there's room to be very aggressive with it. So we're going to have good news flow out of Dumbwa. We're going to have good news flow. We're going to be out there marketing and telling the world about this fantastic project. And then I think what you're going to look at is next steps for us. We have a lot of oxide material on our property, which is a whole other kind of near-term mining concept that we're working on. And that would benefit some of the operators in the region. So we're looking at doing some kind of drill program to establish a resource for oxides. And that's an easy target. It's air core drilling, it's RC drilling, it's all at surface. So we're looking at maybe doing that in the new year. And we're looking at moving these other projects forward. So I think, lots of news flow out of Dumbwa. There's going to be news flow generated by what we're doing in terms of oxides, and then news flow in terms of what our strategy is to get those other pieces of the project now moving forward. And likely that'll be financing oriented, because now the name of the game is, how do we capitalize these? How do we move them forward? And let's get those next steps underway and just keep hammering away at this project and develop it. Yeah.
And leverage this last deal into the next.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Name of the game.
Okay. Awesome, Adrian. Look, it's always great chatting with you. I appreciate you coming on today and opening up the doors on this deal. Congratulations, by the way. It's awesome.
Thanks, Jay. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Super exciting.